know, Tanit, that in Av, we ma'atim b'simcha, we diminish the joy. And Adar, mishenichnas Adar, marbim b'simcha, we add joy. So today we'll try to make that relevant to the talking about joy in the service of Hashem. And in the context of what we've been talking about, the Torah Eretz Yisrael, this bigger perspective, the view that sees this holistic view, not piece by piece, but rather like the illumination from above, where everything is seen clearly in this, like I said, holistic view. Not the rabbis called the Talmud of Bavel. We saw like Gemara in Sanhedrin 24, the Torah in darkness, sitting in the dark. In the dark, it's piece by piece, you try to put things together, facts really close. You have to feel each thing and to see, try to make understanding of what here you have in front of you. Turn on the lights and you see the whole thing. And we saw the Shlach Kadosh, I think, how he spoke about that also affects the study in Eretz Yisrael. The ability to study what he calls the big thing, the big picture of Torah. Like the Gemara in Sukkah, page 28, I think we mentioned, the Rabbi Yochanan, the students of Hillel HaGadol, Hillel Zaken, that he knew, one of the students that knew everything, Yochanan ben Zakkai, knew everything, even the big things and the small things. Remember I said that? Remember the Gemara? The big thing, what's the small thing? Havayot Abai v'Rabba. The discussions of the Talmudic back and forth, the dialectic, the polemics, discussion of you're wrong, you're right, this is proving this and proving it's allowed, it's not allowed, the do's and don'ts of Torah. That's the small thing, the Gemara says. So what's the big thing? The big thing is Maseh Merkava. The goal of creation, you could call it, how God brings the world to its ultimate, like a Merkava, a chariot, how God guides the world to bring the world to its perfection. The deeper wisdom of Torah. That's what the Gemara calls the bigger thing. And that the Shlach Kadosh says that the study in Eretz Yisrael is more on that bigger picture. The details fall into place after seeing this bigger holistic view. It's no longer the need, he says, the pilpul, the back and forth, the give and take. It's more this, again, this view from above, this illuminated view. The Maral we saw in chapter 13 in the Tiva Torah also says how because Eretz Yisrael is the center of the world, not geographic, but the center meaning the root, the foundation, like it says in the Gemara on page Yuma, Nun Dalet, 54, that from Zion the world emanated. The world is created from Zion. Zion, Sion, Eretz Yisrael is like, again, the roots, the white light before it's diffracted into the different colors. This is the center, the holistic totality, the whole, all of God's will that he wishes to bestow, the good, this light, this energy, this justice and truth is revealed in this receptacle of Eretz Yisrael. And there it goes to the prism, and now each piece is fractured, and that's why it's in the Lin of Israel, it's considered the Torah in darkness. Each piece, it's separate. And also the difference that when Torah is limited to the details, to the fragmented, the do's and don'ts, which are very important, those are the vehicles that enable God's name, this bigger light, to come to the world. That's the whole thing of Judaism, of Torah, that it's not some abstract ideal of goodness, of holiness, of justice and goodness, but meanwhile this world doesn't have an ability to link up to that, to connect that, to reveal that. The Torah comes down to every detail of the mitzvot, to the practice. That infinite light comes down through these very practical and real extensions down to the fingernails. That's what the first Christians, the Jews that were searching for more, they wanted idealism, they wanted spirituality. And they said the practical mitzvot, and ultimately Christianity, which developed from that. The practical mitzvot, they're so unnecessary. We want the big things. We want ideals and justice. Yeshayahu, the prophecies of human perfection of society. What's all these details? Not to mix meat and milk spoons. That seems to be ridiculous and meaningless. But those are the amazing phenomena that God created, the vehicles that enable exactly that bigger light to come down to our world, to connect our world, to live it, to live the bigger ideals in practice, in this world. When it's cut off, you just have the branches without the roots. So they took away the branches and said, no, just have the spiritual roots. The problem is that the other side is also, when Judaism is seen as only the branches, the do's and don'ts. You have to do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. It seems like it's all suffocating, preventing you from living full life. You can't do this, everything is, not everything, but it seems like it's all this obstacles, which indeed the first pioneers, they wrote that, Hesh and others that wrote how they saw Judaism, the way that was presented to them, or misrepresented to them, that Judaism is just the do's and don'ts of what you can't do this, of individual life, as opposed to returning to a nation, strong vitality of it could be a kingdom and an army and a government and commerce and industry. Unfortunately, the Torah world rejected that, said, no, we have Judaism. There's religion, and life. Like Christianity, separation of church and state, which is not true by us. But in the exile, that's what it becomes. If you have these details, the do's and don'ts, and without the full illumination from above of this, the full life, the divine ideal of national and universal life to uplift all, to connect all, down to the details, but not only the details. I think I mentioned you last time, right? The Rav Kook, and then how I think that I did read to you in Orot, Kuf Aleph, how Rav Kook talked to the other rabbis, and it says how we have learned Torah, studied Torah, taught the Torah. We forgot the grandeur, the bigness, the bigger ideals of Torah that the rabbis screamed about and yelled that we have to learn and not to expose the ideals of Torah, what's behind the details, what's the meaning, what's the beauty, what's the grandeur. Because again, if you have just the branches without the tree, without the roots, they dry up. But that's what he says here. He brings for I did read you, right? The Tikkun Zohar, that woe unto those that cause the Torah to become dry. That if you have only the practical side of Torah, the do's and don'ts, we'll call it, the branches, the extensions, the details, without the bigger picture, it becomes dry and empty, which is what happened. Like I said, the others that saw, they want life, they want vitality. And you tell them, don't mix these. They want tikkun olam, fixing the world. The truth is that bigger tikkun olam, fixing the world, depends on, it comes only through those unique branches that bring down that light and beauty and holiness down to this world and change this world, not just to talk about bigger ideals and your life remains corrupt and evil and self-centered and probably problematic and moral decay, but rather how to bring it down to life itself. But again, so what happens in the Torah of the Galut, it can be this details alone. The service of God becomes this Yirat HaOnesh. What's Yirat HaOnesh?
Like punishment.
Fear of punishment. You have these are details. This is Torah. This is what the rabbis tell you. The God tells you what you have to do, and so you believe, and you don't want to. You believe that God punishes if you don't do, and He rewards if you do. So the best service you have there is like Yirat HaOnesh. Not that everyone in exile has this only Yirat HaOnesh. But again, this concept, when you have the details per se, and Judaism is just left on that level, then what it can lead to is that you have the fear of punishment. Is the service of God is based more on this fear of punishment. The Rambam in the Laws of Tshuva, the end of the Laws of Tshuva, in chapter 10, says it is. A person should not say, I will fulfill the mitzvot of the Torah and occupy myself in its wisdom to study Torah in order to receive all the blessings which are contained within it, or in order to merit the life of the world to come. He's someone who believes. He believes in God. He believes that God rewards and punishes and is the world to come. He says, but it's not proper to serve God in that manner, with that intention. I'm doing the mitzvot in order to receive all the blessings. Similarly, I will not do the sins which the Torah warned against. I will be saved from all the curses contained in the Torah. He believes God punishes. But there's this God, there's this strong power above, this policeman that's watching that I can't run away from. I wish I could, but I can't. I believe that He's there, and I don't want to punish, I don't want to suffer, I want to get the reward. But ultimately, who is he serving? Himself. As the Ramchal explains in chapter 19, in Path of the Just, that Sof Sof will say he's serving for himself ultimately. What do I get out of it? So it is not fitting, the Rambam says, to serve God in this manner. A person whose service is motivated by these factors is considered one who serves out of fear. He goes on again. The whole motivation is for his own welfare. What you're supposed to do, what is the higher level, to do what is true because it's true, and ultimately good will come because of it. There is a reward and punishment. God does reward. That's all true. But the question is, where's your motivation? What's your reason? Not that there's no reward, and God isn't. There is a again, the doctor tells you what is healthy to eat. This is poison, this is not good. But it's all for your good, it's all for your benefit. The question is, again, is my focus only on my welfare, or I want to do truth because it's true. I want the good for the sake of good, to bring good to the world, to do God's will, to bring about the fulfillment, the redemption of Israel. All that we pray for, all the prayers are to bring about the fulfillment of what God has in store for the world, which is ultimately, good will come of it. Those are all good things. God wants the good. But it's all because of you. It surrounds you. He says, rather, God commanded us to seek this rung of service as conveyed by in Dvarim chapter 6. Love God, your Lord. I'm just skipping around here. He says this is a high level. Not everyone reaches this level. Again, this idea of serving God out of love, nothing to do with me, no personal incentives, just for the sake of good. I want that good should be revealed in the world should be a better place. Idealistic person, totally altruistic, nothing. That's a high level, he says. But he describes another place in the Hakdama, the Rambam, to Perek Chelek, the chapter in Sanhedrin that talks about Olam Haba. Every Jew has a place in the world to come. And there the Rambam has an important introduction. He has a few introductions to the Mishnah in general. It's very important to read them. There's a book that collected the introduction to the Rambam, to the Mishnah, and here there's also the Pirkei Avot, and to Shmona Prakim, and the introduction to Perek Chelek. That's the special chapter. And there he talks about educating a child, that you tell a child, you teach him to do his homework, to study Torah. Why? You can't explain to him the bigger values of how this actually brings about the betterment of all of creation, of all of existence, as elevated. You tell him you do the homework and you'll get a chocolate bar. What's important to him is the chocolate bar. But he does the homework or learns the Torah in order to get what's important in his eyes. He'll swallow the pill to whatever he had told him to do. He has to learn Torah to get to what's really important in his eyes. Until he gets more advanced, and the Rambam explained, he said he give him peanuts and whatever, or clothes, bicycle, that he doesn't say, but clothes and different things that's what's important to him. The chocolate no longer is the most important thing in the world, but now it's later becomes money. Learn Torah, be there, do the mitzvot for money, and later the person gets to the point he realizes money isn't everything. It's almost everything, but it's not everything. In God we trust. Some people put that on the dollar. That's where they're. But later, a person that honor, you learn Torah, you become a rabbi, they'll stand up for you, they'll look up to you, you'll be a professor, you'll be respected. Don't respect, that's already. And then they become more sophisticated in learning Torah in order to get to the world to come. But all those things are the means, he says, until the Rambam says, till more and more the development, the spiritual, moral development, that he does good for the sake of good. He brings down the Sifri. The Sifri says, desire his commandments greatly. Desire his commandments and not the reward which comes from his commandments. Again, the idea being doing it for the sake of the ideal in of itself, the good for the good and not for the personal benefit. How does that bring us to the joy? That's connected to doing the mitzvot out of joy, doing out of the love of God, you realize you're doing something so important, but that we'll get to soon, the letter of Rav Kook, how to get to this level. But there's a background here, the Rambam and the laws of Sukkah and the Lulav at the end. The Rambam talks about the joy. Because there you have the mitzvah during Sukkot, the Simchat Beit HaShoivah in the temple, the waters, and he said it's a big mitzvah to add to this joy, to participate in this joy. And then he talks about joy in general. At the end of the halakha, he talks about what is joy in the service of Hashem. He says the joy, to the joy one should have in doing the mitzvot and the service of God, the connection to God, avodah gdolai, it's a great work. Either great meaning that it's difficult or challenging, or that it's a big thing. It's an important thing. I think that's what I think it means. It's a very important thing, doing the service out of God, out of joy, not just to serve him like a robot. Like I said, Yata Onish says, you're doing what he says, I'm a servant, whatever. I believe that I'm trapped in this thing, in this system that I have to do, or else I'll suffer. I don't want to suffer. That's what he said is not the proper way to serve God. And here he says the opposite, the doing out of love, out of understanding, out of appreciation, out of the joy. Where does he say, where do you learn that from? Anyone who prevents himself from this level or refrains from this level of doing this service out of joy is worthy of the punishment. For it says in the Torah and Kitavo, the curses, there's a long list of curses in the Parshat Kitavo and Dvarim, chapter 28. Tachat asher lo avarat Hashem Elokecha b'simcha b'tuv levav. Because you served God, or like maybe better English, lo avarat, because you didn't serve God out of joy. Not that you didn't serve God. It doesn't stop. You didn't serve God. No, there's all these punishments, all these unbelievable curses that are there upon the nation, the Jews, the people, because you didn't serve God. No, you didn't serve God. You went an improper way, but it doesn't say that. Because you didn't serve God with joy. The Rambam learns from that how important it is the joy. The commentary on the Rambam, the Maggid Mishneh, says the main thing is that it's not worthy for a person lasota mitzvot mitzat shehem chova, that he shouldn't do it as some obligation. It is an obligation, but not as a chore that you can't run away from. You wish you're just like this. Again, this fear of punishment that you wish you could get away from. That you're coerced to do, but rather you should do them and be joy in their doing them. V'yaseh tov mitzat shu tov, like he brings what the Rambam said here. This is from the laws of the lulav, and the 4 species of ansukot. The Maggid Mishneh brings what the Rambam says here, the same wording. You should do good for the sake of good and choose the truth because it's true. How would I get out of it? Like as an idealistic person that wants the good, wants to do truth. It might be difficult, it might be hard, it might be challenging. But he realizes he appreciates the good, the truth. I want to do good. And he says, if you do what you're created to do, you'll be happy. The truth is, when we do what we're created to do, which is to bring that good to the world, our neshama is this chunk of godliness, this spiritual DNA. Our life force is that which is goodness of God that's planted in the Jewish people to manifest that good in this world. That's being normal. To be some idealistic is not I'm sacrificing my private life. I'm giving up my joy and my happiness, whatever. To be an idealist, to bring good to others, to bring good to the world, to do God's will. That's what you're created to. That's the most normal thing. And that brings the biggest joy. When you do what you're supposed to do, what you're created to do, that is what brings joy. The problem is people do things that are not really themselves. They think, they're not sure what they are. They don't know who they are. They see other people doing this, other people doing that. So they think they want to emulate them, they want to copy them. But they're not happy. People with a lot of money, and they're successful, so to speak, but are not necessarily happy. They end up spending all the money on the psychologists to figure out why they're not so... why this angst and dissatisfaction with their life, and you have everything you want, so to speak, because they're not doing themselves to be themselves, to be their true selves. And the true inner self is this goodness. That's what Am Yisrael we mentioned in Orot once, right? Remember that in the end of Orot Yisrael, chapter 1, how I translate this, the inner essence of the absolute desire to bring good to all with no limitations whatsoever, no limitation, neither in the quantity of those you bestow the good upon. You want to give good to everything, not just to your friends, your family, your nation, to the world, all the creations, all of existence. You want to bring good to endless, beneficiaries of that good. Beneficiaries. The nitavim. And also there's no limitation, no limit whatsoever to the quality of that good. Not just a little good to do a little favor, but you want to bring the super good, the good that God knows, the absolutely infinite good to infinite creatures, infinite. That is the nucleus, again, there's 5 levels we mentioned here. That's the inner nucleus of the essence of the neshama of Knesset Yisrael, which is the soul of the collective soul of the Jewish people throughout history, the roots of the roots. The inner, in other words, our inner DNA is that desire to do good. And doing so, therefore, is not like I'm giving up of myself to be an idealist, to be sacrificing. You're not sacrificing. That's the true you. The limb, how do you say, like the rabbis explain, that each one of us is a cell in the body, is a limb in the body. Working for others, is not something else for us, as giving up. That's your true essence. And that's how everyone gives for the other, and that's how they make up and complete the full body. But that's what each one is created to facilitate, to bring about the good, the benefit of all, of the whole, of the collective. I'm just a part of this bigger unit, which is the truth is. Rav Kook has a song, Orot HaKodesh, a song. It's called Shir HaMerubah, the quadruple song. There are those that sing the song of themselves, what they're focused on, their ideals are, what's good for me, physical, even spiritual, the family. There are those that sing the song of the nation, of the Jewish people, but limited. Heck with everyone else. We just worried about our nation. And those that sing the song of mankind, and those that sing the cons of the universe, and the Shir HaShirim, the quadruple, he's worried about, concerned with, he wants to bring about the good for all of existence. Like you mentioned, I think we mentioned last week, we read all the alls in Rav Kook. I don't know if we mentioned it already. But how everything is the all, this whole totality. That's the most normal, that's the most healthy, that's the real us. If you're not like that, most of it, we have a lot of selfish, we have a little private interest. We have to get over that because that's not the true us. The true simcha, getting back to the Magid Mishnah, the true simcha is when you could show say, Mashu Nivra Bisholo Yismach, you'll be so happy and full of joy. Because that is what the true joy depends on. So the question is, getting down to what I wanted to do, of how do we get to that joy? How do we get to that simcha? So there's a letter of Rav Kook, which again is pertinent to, like I said, this month. We have the Mishnah Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. So how do we reach this level? The Rambam said in general, not worthy to serve out of fear of punishment, of selfish. But how do we get to this level of loving? He said, not so simple. He said, it's only for it's a very special level. There's one that has two, yeah.
I read in Gemara that Chazal says that we have to be thankful and consider as a blessing when we have a hardship from Hashem. And so,
even when we have, not
especially,
only, not especially, even.
So this is the reason why we should serve with joy for in any kind of situation. We have always to be
the joy. The joy. We'll see what Rav Kook writes about but the joy of what you're referring to, I think, is that even when there's suffering, even when there's things that we don't understand how it's for the good, it's also for the good, and we appreciate it and know that God wants our best interest for us and for the world. Nothing happens by chance, or it's just coming to even the punishment, so to speak, is coming to rectify, to put us on the right stage, to return us. We're about to fall off in bad directions, to bring us back to health. Like the doctor says, don't eat this, don't eat. He's limiting us, but he's not limiting. That's how you can stay healthy and live your proper life. So even the bad things that we see are bad, it says how we make a blessing on the bad tidings, right? Ruch Dan Emet. But it says the Tzlach, he writes in his commentary on the Gemara that in this world it says we say that on good blessings, at good things we say Tova Mitiv, and bad things we say Daran Hamet. That we know God is the true judge and He knows the truth and He knows it's all for the good. But we trust that He's Daran Hamet. But it says that in the Gemara, and in the future we'll say everything Tova Mitiv. We'll say only at there's only good things. There's only good things happen, and we only say Tova Mitiv. Nothing. There's no more death. There's no more suffering. No more evil. So there's nothing to say Dan Emetan. But the Tzlach says no. In the future, that's true. That will be only good things. It'll be the fulfillment of all of the betterment of all of reality. But he says what this Gemara is referring to, that in the future we'll say Tova Mitiv on what? We'll say Tova Mitiv on the things that we previously said Dan Emet. Because in the future we'll see and understand how what we thought was for bad was actually beneficial, made us stronger, made us better, brought us to a higher level, to a better level. So in other words, in the future we're going to say Tova Mitiv on the things that we in our world or our vision we thought as bad and painful. We'll see, and then we'll understand how indeed they were for the best. And we're going to say Tova Mitiv, like another blessing on what happened before. So what we see is now, but here Rav Kook will say, I'll try to give an explanation of how to reach this level of service out of joy. So this is a letter, it's called Eish, Shin Aleph. Again, the letters of Rav Kook are lettered, right? The first on the order. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, like 1, 2, 3. They're not numbered, they're lettered, Aleph, Bet, Gimel. So this is letter 301 with Eish, Shin Aleph. Written to a rabbi, as you see, this rabbi that seeks God with all his heart and soul, Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weisfish. And he asked him, or you'll see from the letter what he asked him. Line number 5, your precious letter has reached me. As for your request for my advice regarding strengthening the life of the soul for the service of God with joy and gvura, with might, with courage. He asked him, how, as the rabbi, He was serving God. But he asked, how can I serve more with joy? I do what I'm supposed to do. The Gemara says in Sotah, who is a Hasid Shoteh? Who is a foolish, righteous person? Righteous, he's doing what he's supposed to do, but foolish, not the proper way. Because the Gemara says there, he's Machovati v'esen. He says, what's my obligation, and I'll do it. Tell me what I have to do. Put a check. I have to put on tefillin. Okay, put the check. Now let me go. Let me breathe. Let me go back to life. There's the mitzvot. There's the Torah. He says, what I have to do, and let me do it, get it over with, and now go back to life. As if it's, again, separate from life. It's something that obstructs life. It's something you have to do because God, the policeman, is watching. That's a chassid. He's doing what he has to do, but that's not the proper service for sure. So how can you avoid that? How can you get beyond that? How can you do it? Because then we know God tells us, so we do it. How can you do it with joy? How can you love what you're doing? You're putting on tefillin, you're doing all these different things that are chore, that we get up in the morning, you have to get up. So again, we do it, and we serve, and we believe, but out of joy. So you ask this rabbi, asked Rav Kook for the advice, how can I serve God with joy and gvura? Gvura, like tilid gaber, to overcome all the difficulties and challenges. To do it with might, with strength, not just to do it and barely get it over with, but with joy. And joy, we'll see, brings the might, brings the ability, once you understand and appreciate, and are so happy doing it. If you're doing something that you're happy to do, you have the strength to do so, even if there's obstacles and challenges on the way, even when it's difficult, right? If you're happy, you want to do something, then but it's hard. No, but you're happy and you want to do it, so you can overcome all the difficulties. So again, that's what he asked him. So Rav Kook says in line number 8, the main encouragement, you asked me what is to give you this advice. It's very difficult to clarify even one fundamental principle of pure service in brief words. It's hard for me to give you one rule, one quick answer that will solve your question here in brief words. The main encouragement, so that what I can tell you in general, is that I give to myself and those like me, is only to set appropriate times for the spiritual part of Torah study in all of its aspects. Again, the spiritual part, the tzara ruchani, this is the aspect of Torah that we've been talking about, the world of emunah, learning emunah, what I said before, the Gemara calls it the davar gadol, the bigger things of Torah. There's the details, there's the bread of Torah, the rabbis call it, I call the do's and don'ts, the bread, the basics, and there's the wine that gives it the taste and the bigger the joy. That's the spiritual side of Torah, with the word of emunah, the Kuzari, the Ramchal, the Maharal, Nefesh HaChaim, the Tanya, ultimately the Kabbalah, the deeper works of what's behind it all, what's the meaning, what's the idea, what's it all for? Not just how to do this and that, the why, what beauty, what grandeur. But that's what he's going to say soon. But in other words, that's the study of that aspect of Torah. If that's neglected, we saw, then that brings, the rabbis forewarned us, that will bring to a dryness of the details of the do's and don'ts. Not because they're dry, but if you detach them from their roots, then they become dry. They seem meaningless. They're not meaningless, as we'll see. They're full of super meaning. But that takes a full study of the spiritual aspect of the spiritual side of Torah and all of its aspects, so that it's not left in the corner and given to an occasional reading. You read it out to you, I'll read, the Kuzari on the side, the Maharal. It's not some philosophy, interesting wisdom. That is what's the neshama of Torah. There's the body of Torah, the neshama of Torah. Like I said, Pirkei Avot, Yesh Gufei Torah. As a result of that study, the light of the soul will shine. There'll be an illumination from within. This is the neshama that's inside of us. The Torah is our neshama. It's our natural inner essence. It's not some external book of laws, of commandments, a codex you're supposed to listen to or else. Like the doctor that tells you, I don't know, if the medical book tells you to breathe, 20 times a minute, whatever. A person who's sick needs the book to tell him what to do. The natural thing that's inside, it's telling you to do so. That's your nature. That's your normal situation. If you're not normal, you need the external thing. We're not so normal. We don't know our inner essence by ourselves. We need the Torah that tells you exactly how to live. But how to live what? How to live yourself. How to live life properly, fully, to be you, the real you, the super you. Not less life, even more life. Like Avraham Avinu, the fathers kept the Torah before it was given. They had this natural. They were natural. They were normal, living their nature. Didn't have the need to tell them externally. We have that block, so to speak. It's now limited. In order, God did it that way, that we should have free will to choose to become yourself, to choose to recognize who you are. It's a bigger level to have the free will to choose and to make yourself like the Ramchal explains in the beginning of Derech Hashem and Dat Funot, of the why there's free will, to in order that bigger gift of free will, that you make it, you made yourself. You got into that good, you by choice. You had the choice to do something else, to do evil. You had two roads, and you chose the proper road, and of your own moral, spiritual development, as opposed to a robot just does. He has no choice. There's one guy on the ballot in Russia, whatever. You vote for him, and that's it. But that's not a great not honor, a great achievement. Like we mentioned, like someone in the basketball team goes out to the championship, and the opposing team doesn't show up, and he's crowned the champion. Great victory. It didn't need no opponent. No, here we have an opponent, and we overcome it. By overcoming that, we become even greater. The good is enhanced by the dealing with the negative and overcoming it. But that's something else. But again, so here it says not something you read on the side. The learning of the spiritual aspect of Torah should be very much appropriate times for study. And as a result, then the light of the soul, that inner essence, will become so illuminated, and the spirit of joy and might will pulse in the heart of one who seeks truth wholeheartedly. It'll be a natural outcome. The study this enhances this study, awakens the soul to become true yourself. Your true self starts to get rid of that shell that conceals it, so to speak. Until we said in the future, that we said. I mean, the Torah tells us, right? We saw the Ramban in Dvarim chapter 30, verse 6, that in the future there'll be no free will. You'll do which is good naturally. Torah is your nature. It always is our nature, but now it's, like I said, concealed, and you have to choose to get rid of those obstacles, those concealment. And that's what the Ramban calls the Torah says in the future, I'll circumcise your heart. So the Ramban says, what's the circumcision of the heart? Because there's something that conceals your heart. Your true inner nature is covered, is concealed. You get rid of the foreskin, you get rid of that covering, and in the future there'll be no free will. You'll be normal, you'll be good, you'll be as nature, he says. You look it up if those haven't seen it. It's very amazing. The Ramban, it brings the verses in Yirmiyahu and Yechezkel, how this future level of man is a chunk of goodness, what he is internally always. But so this is what happens by this study, enhances that inner light of the soul, the inner truth, your inner good, and becomes more of a different life level. It's not some intellectual study. You learn Jewish philosophy, you learn the Maral, the Kuzari, you have different departmentalized, there's the Kuzari, the Rambam, the rationalist, and as if you're learning some philosophy of Judaism or Jewish philosophers. These are things that enhance that soul and awaken and become, you're like a life changer. You become a different person, a different life level. Nevertheless, Rav Kook says, that's my general advice. But nevertheless, I will not withhold good from stating one great principle. There is one principle I can give you, even though it will not be understood in all its depth except through much repetition and study. Also, like the Path of the Just. How does he start the book? I'll get the book. Right, he says how this book will not add anything new to you. I'm not saying anything here that isn't known already. The whole book is nothing new. So why are you writing a book for? I think he says that in the beginning. The author says, I have written this book not to teach people that they do not know, but rather to remind them of what they already know and clearly understand. Because most of the words you'll find nothing new, right? Everything knows these things. However, the problem is that because they're so well known and so truth is so self-evident, they're routinely overlooked and people forget about them altogether. They're so normal, obviously you don't think about it, you don't analyze it, you don't internalize it. You think, serving God, what's there to know? Like our book also writes in Moshe and Midot Riyah. God is God, serving Him is serving Him, fear is fear. So what's there to learn? But what that means and to learn to understand it and to internalize it, to be a different life level, it's not some intellectual knowledge. You know the words I'm going to say, but to live that level. Nevertheless, what he says here also, this is what I'm about to give you, a principle that needs much repetition and study. Still, at least this one thing I'll give you will be a handle, right? Something to hold on to for those who desire the love of God and the light of the Holy Torah. So what is this principle? You have it in front of you? Line number 16. I'm trying to do it quickly to finish it because it is simple and it was obvious, maybe the better translation. It is obvious that even the lowest of men, the most banal, the most selfish, the most egoistic, whatever, selfish person, if presented with the opportunity to do kindness for the entire world, which includes so many beings beyond measure, if he would give an opportunity, he would be aroused to do so with joy and gvura, to do good. If they told you that there's someone, God forbid, outside, fell or needs your help, whatever, and you could save him, you go outside, you run outside, there's nothing that would, you do it happily, You'd say, what, I'm really tired now, whatever. You would go out and run and save him. You could save his life. And you would do it with joy. And like also with gvura, because I wouldn't say there's obstacles. It's too hard, it's too far away. I would go running to do so. Certainly if it was like 5 people, 10 people, there was an accident, God forbid, and you could save hundreds of people. If you knew you can bring such good to the world, even the laziest person would get up and do so with joy and might. All the laziness and weakness comes only from the lack of faith or the lack of knowledge in the greatness of the good that one actually does for all of existence through the study of Torah. Look at the list. How do you affect the world? In actuality, not philosophically, not emotionally, or whatever. In reality, how you affect the world through the study of Torah. Line number 20, the performance of mitzvot, divine service, maybe that tefillah, the refinement of character traits, becoming a better person. Not me becoming a better, more getting rid of anger and then jealousy. All these things I'm becoming, working on my path to the just. You go through all the traits, you become more of a refined, moral person. That has an effect on the world. For this reason, but that's hard to see. What do you mean I affect the world? I learn the Torah here in Machon Meir, I affect the world. I put on tefillin and that affects the world. The senses don't pick that up. The 5 senses that we have see the influence that I can influence. Maybe you, I talk to you, but there's 3 different levels of influence. There's the direct influence of I say something to you and you say yes and I agree and I do it, whatever. Or maybe indirect, formal education, informal. You read the book of a tzaddik in our time. You read the book about Rabbi Levine, what a tzaddik, what a chesed, what greatness, graciousness, and goodness and kindness he did. You wake up to want to be like him, to do certain things. And then there's another Rav Kook talks about what's called hashpas kulit, this mystical, metaphysical. There's metaphysical influence. That what you do, you can influence by without even touching or seeing or even knowing. You can sit in this room and you have an influence on other phenomenon outside of you that you don't see it physically. Again, the 5 senses don't pick that up. Like I mentioned, the metaphor always the child in the Pentagon, whatever, it goes in and he pushes that button. They say, don't you go near this button, and everyone's so screaming that he pushes this button. What did I do? I pushed this button 3 millimeters, 5 millimeters. He goes, no, but that button sends off this system, whatever, that sends off these intercontinental ballistic missiles that destroy half the world. And what are we talking about? I pushed a little thing right here in this private room. No one knows, no one saw. So you don't see, our physical eyes don't see the influence and the connections of world to world to worlds, that indeed there are connections that you don't see. As we says, how do we know? How can we get that feeling of joy if we don't see how it influences the world? She said, for line number 21, for that reason, God has enlightened our eye with the words of the Supreme Holy Ones, great rabbis and scholars, the bearers of true Kabbalah, who have expanded our understanding to make known, indeed, the great preciousness of divine service and how through it we elevate the entirety of existence in all of its details. I think the classic book on that, not only, but is like the Nefesh HaChaim. Who wrote the Nefesh HaChaim? Chaim Volozhin, the student of the Vilna Gaon, founded the Yeshiva Volozhin, the mother of Yeshivot, it's called, where Rav Kook studied. But there, in that book, had a great influence on me. It talks about, reveals, so to speak, the influence of your 3 levels: these speech, action, speech, and thought, parallel to the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the levels of our inner being. Not to talk about, we don't have time. Well, we really don't have time. But there, maybe we'll finish next. He exposes the underpinning, the workings of how there is the connections of what your actions and speech and thought here in a room, in a private, whatever, how they are connected to and affect other worlds, the spiritual world, not just the neighbors and other, but they affect how it's connected to the higher levels of existence that you don't see. You don't even see it, or you know about them, maybe you don't. But the rabbis are aware and expose and teach us what these levels of existence and creation, and how you can affect them. You open up a little faucet here, you push the little button here, but that is just a faucet. You say, what am I doing? Just turning a little faucet. Yeah, but that faucet, like you have at the home, you have a faucet, and that lets the waters that come from the pipes of the city, and the pipes of the city come from the Kinneret, whatever. So you have water, you have the central CP, this great, body of water, infinite waters above, the divine, which come through all these different channels that come down to your faucet. When you open that little faucet, it's not just the effect of what you see. What did I do with this and back at Shabbat, mixing meat and milk spoons? What did I do? But that opens a faucet of waters that come to the world that can irrigate the world and bring good to the world and then add light to the world beyond what you see in this tiny act. So the Nefesh HaChaim again the deeper works of Kabbalah, these sources of the Zohar, talk about each detail, how it works, how like this week's parasha, and last week also the Truma of the vessels in the tabernacle that Bezalel, right, he knew how to bring. What was the great knowledge he had to know? Because there wasn't just vessels; they were the vessels that bring down and enable to receive and express these lights above to come to this world. Each vessel is exact. Just like in the body, things are exact. If the brain, a little part, what's the difference? You put a part here, put a little synapses, whatever. But everything, especially the higher levels, the higher you go, the more exact. That's why if impure, like in the temple, you can go to certain places. To the closer place, the higher the temple, the higher the levels. If you're pure, only the Kohen, the Kohen Gadol. The more central you go to, the more significant every exact the details are. That's how it's built. Again, there's physics of the world, how things are, right? Laws of physics, how life and continues to work, and also the metaphysics, the superphysics of how the divine life, this infinite light, comes to this world, how to connect this world to something much greater. So that's what Nefesh HaChaim, again, in general, gives that perspective, that understanding of how we're built, like a nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, how they're affected to these actions, speech, and thought. But of course, that's not enough just to read that, because it's still abstract and it's still how to internalize that. So we'll talk about that next week. We thought we finished. So remind me, this is where we got up to, line number 25. And we'll continue because it's very important. And again, this month of joy, we have to know, how can we get to joy? How can we live that level? To read that, it affects the world. You say so, but how? To fill me with joy is not enough just to say these nice fancy words.